All right, I think we have most folks here. I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Um, Hi, everyone. I wanted to thank you all for joining us today. We have nearly 400 students from 9 schools across the state with us today, and we're so excited to share some resources and experiences with you that might help you as you start to think about your own future careers. My name is Anna, and I'm with VSAC's GEAR UP program. GEAR UP is a federally funded program that serves 37 schools throughout Vermont and over 250,000 students across the United States. 3 of our panel members this year are GEAR UP program alumni, and I know we have a number of GEAR UP schools with us today, as well as a number of VSAC Talent Search schools. Through both of these programs, a VSAC outreach counselor can help you with future planning, career exploration, employability skills, college and job training program applications, and much more. If you're interested in participating, you can talk to your school counselor for more information and to find out if you're eligible to apply. So with that, I am going to hand it off to our moderator, Kathi Terami from Careers CLiC, to get us started. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Anna, and a huge shout out to VSAC for pulling together this event, bringing students from schools all over the state to hear about different career fields from Vermonters. So before we get started, I just want to mention a few things. We will be using the chat quite a bit. So students, if you have questions that come up as you're listening to different people talk about their career fields, you can go ahead and pop those into the chat. And if you're not in front of a computer, you can ask an adult in the room to put it into the computer. And some questions might be answered right in the chat. And if they're not, we will get them answered and send out the answers to your schools afterwards. So either way, either during the session or after, we'll get those answers to your questions. So feel free to use the chat anytime you want. Okay, so I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Kathi Terami. I work for Careers CLiC. We do career exploration and career awareness and career preparation for students in grades kindergarten through 12th grade. Middle school is an age set that's great to be exploring careers, which is what we're going to do today. And I wanted to think back to when I was in middle school and what my career aspiration was. I know some of you are thinking about that right now. I wanted to be a chef in a restaurant. That was my career aspiration in middle school. When I went on to high school, I was interested in interior design. And then I went to college, got a business degree, and now I'm working for a nonprofit organization. When I was in middle school, I didn't know that you could earn a living working for a nonprofit organization. So here I am today, many years later, doing that work. So we're excited to hear what some of your career interests are in the chat and connect you with some people who might be doing some of those things around the state. So first up for you today, we have Matt Berwitz from the Vermont Department of Labor. And Matt is going to talk to you a little bit about himself and his career path. And he's also going to introduce you to some labor market information so you can learn about some of the important details behind the career fields we'll learn about today. Matt, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Kathi. I really appreciate it. I'm happy to be here. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's excited as we are to be here to share some information. Labor market information is just a fancy term for data that focuses about jobs and the economy. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And if people don't mind, I thought I would just share a screen so that I could kind of walk through what I do on a day-to-day basis, but also kind of who I am and where I come from. So hopefully this is coming up. We got a Vermont Career Connect. We're in November 2023. This is a standard slide I use to just thank my federal partners. Though I work for the state of Vermont, for the Vermont Department of Labor, I'm actually funded by the federal government. And I use this in front of every presentation just to kind of give background to who I am, and I'll break this down for you in just a moment. And so what I do for the Vermont Department of Labor is I am an economist. An economist is an occupational title I didn't even know existed when I was your age. I had no idea there was a job called economist. And so one of the things we do is we have a website that's full of data. And this is something that you and your classrooms could visit. It's vtlmi.info, but you can do career exploration where there's going to be videos and descriptions of all the different jobs in the Vermont economy. And also this brochure, which we're going to spend some time with talking about today. And we have some panelists that are going to be highlighting their career paths and how it relates to the brochure. So there's lots of information on our website, and that's really what we're all about. And so I just am so happy that you're all here. You all chose this. Maybe it was your teachers who chose it, but you're here today. And so I think it's important we take a moment to appreciate that you're being here and you're being curious. You're asking questions about jobs, about education. You know, there's no right answer. There's just something that feels right for you. And everyone's answer is going to be different. Everyone's questions are going to be different. And no one has perfect information. And that's why we're all here today to help you try and get the best information you can to make the choices you have about what classes you want to take, what trainings might be interesting to you, and ultimately what jobs might be the most fulfilling and rewarding for you. So let's talk economics. As I said, I didn't even know there was something called economics when I was young. But here, I want to bring this slide back and highlight in yellow. It says the purpose. This is the purpose of my division. I have a whole team, and we do this, is to produce, explain, and disseminate, meaning release, economic data. So we have a team of people that actually compile data from Vermont households, from Vermont businesses, counting how many people are working, what type of jobs they have, like how many cashiers there are in the state of Vermont, how many teachers there are in the state of Vermont. And we also go to businesses and schools and even to the State House, where I'll testify to elected officials to explain this data and talk about what it means for the Vermont economy. Because if you take nothing away from today, I hope you take away the fact that there are a lot of job opportunities in the state of Vermont. There's over 600 different occupations in the state of Vermont. Over 600. You just have to find the one that makes the most sense for you. And hopefully through this brochure, we'll be able to kind of cut that search down for you. But even with those 600 occupations, there's lots of different pathways to get into them. And so this is the kind of like the fun of life. You get to choose your own adventure. And so for me, how did it all begin, right? As I said, I didn't even know there was something called an economist when I was young. And so for me, it started here at a grocery store. I worked at a grocery store all through high school. And, you know, I learned a lot through that job. The first thing I learned is that, hey, I'm pretty good at numbers, because even people, when you work in a grocery store, you have to, at that time, know all the codes for fruit, because fruit gets sold by weight. And so each fruit has a different code because you have to charge a different price for it. So I learned quickly while I was on the job that I can memorize these fruit codes very quickly, because my colleagues would ask, instead of looking them up for themselves, they'd just say, hey, Matt, what's the code for peaches? And I yell out 3231, and they go, thanks, and they move on. And so quickly I realized, oh, I'm pretty good at numbers. So I decided to keep going to school. So I went to Essex High School, and then I went to University of Vermont, where I started studying computer science, but I realized I didn't like computer science and switched to economics. But during college, I worked in a mailroom. And there is numbers that are very important to mailrooms, which are zip codes. And so for a while, I knew like 95% of all the zip codes in the state of Vermont. I used to be pretty fun at parties, just yelling out zip codes to where people's hometown was. I'm not as good as that anymore. I think Bethel, I saw, is in the chat, is like 05032. Tunbridge might be 05077. Those are just wild guesses. This is 20 years ago, so you got to give me a break. But I still have all those numbers rattling around in my head. And that's ultimately like what kind of got me to where I was going. Because did I know where I was going? No, I did not. But I kept taking classes. I kept taking jobs that seemed to fit for me. And it kept leading me into the next path and moving on. And I learned some really key things that will always apply to you in your job search. 1, show up on time. 2, work well with others. 3, follow instructions. Those 3 things will make you successful in any career pathway. And in fact, we got those 3 summary points of the skills needed by interviewing Vermont employers. We called 2,000 Vermont employers and said, what are you looking for? They said, we need people who will show up on time, work well with others, and follow instructions. And that's very much what your classroom is preparing for you. But before we move on, we're going to switch to some instructions for you right now. We're going to do this quickly so that we can get to the rest of the panel. But your instructions now, if you have your brochure, you can take it out. This is a simple game of choose option A or choose option B, right? And there's only what feels right to you. There's no wrong answer here. And it might be different from your friends. And over time, your answers may change. That's okay. But right now, it's just like you got to kind of go with your gut. What feels right? these are called blink responses. So if you look into the brochure, it's divided up into 4 tables. If we look at just the first 2 tables here, we have, do you like to observe, learn, analyze, or solve problems? So are you kind of like to look at things and solve problems? Or do you like to work with people and use your creativity? Similar, but very different. So you'd have to choose, do you want to learn, analyze, and solve problems? Or do you want to work with people, use your creativity? And these are very general concepts, but it can be illustrated by the occupations in here, the jobs that people have. Would you prefer to be a nurse or a teacher? So just take a second, even in your hands, using hands in your classrooms, you can say, who wants to be a nurse? Hands up. Who would prefer to be a teacher? Hands up. There's no right or wrong answer. And some of these might be both bad answers for you, but that's kind of the fun of the game, is you have to choose something. Nurses like to solve problems. Teachers like to work with people. Different example, software developers or photographers. Who wants to be a software developer? Hands up. Who would prefer to be a photographer, doing all that creative stuff? And the last 2 in the brochure are working with your hands to fix, build, make things. The other ones is organized and detailed information, working lots of information. So this gets highlighted by, would you prefer to be a carpenter or a bookkeeper? Would you rather build houses or run the numbers on how much it costs to build that house? Would you prefer to be a plumber or a lawyer? Again, there's no right or wrong answers here, but as you're listening to yourself, even me asking these questions, even if you're not answering in your classroom, just be thinking, I think I'd probably prefer to go that way. The more you're saying, I think I prefer to lean that way, is going to help you narrow down that search. That's those 600 jobs or different types of jobs in the Vermont economy quickly get divided down to 200, 100, 50 possible jobs that you might be interested in. Then once you have it down to that small manageable number, it's easy to start plotting out which classes, what trainings, what other types of jobs might help you in that journey. So I do want to thank you so much for being here. It is going to be a fun morning, and I will turn it back to Kathi.
Thank you so much, Matt. And now that you've unshared your screen, you can take a look in the chat at all of the fruit codes flying around there. You're not the only one who's memorized them. So love it. Love how you turned your love for numbers into a career path that you are so successful at now. So students, I have been watching the classroom monitors, and I'm seeing many of you have this guide out right in front of you that Matt just walked us through. This guide represents about 10% of the occupations available in Vermont. So you can see these occupations, some of that labor market information that we talked about that relates to some of the highest paying, highest demand jobs in Vermont. But then Matt pointed you out to some resources that we can also share in the follow-up information to schools, where you can go look up any career, any of the 600 or so occupations that are out there. But this guide can get you started on understanding that. So next, what we're going to do is introduce you to our career panel, and they are each going to represent a different category in this brochure that you have. So we are going to start with Stephane. If you would unmute yourself. I would love all of the panelists to introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and let us know a little bit about your career path, what aspirations you might have had in middle school, and then what milestones along the way got you to the job that you have right now, and describe that job. So we'll start with Stephane.
All right, my name is, can everybody hear me? Mic check.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, so my name is Stephane. I went to Colchester Middle School. And yeah, so when I was in middle school, I wanted to be like a superstar actor. I wanted to be a singer. Back then, everybody just wanted to be on the big screen, be a movie star, something where your mom can notice you and be proud of. So we grew up dreaming of, Justin Bieber, Selena Gomez, all the superstar singers. So that's what I wanted to do. But as time went on, turned out I couldn't sing that well. So I had to pick up a different thing that I wanted to put my interest into. And I played video games a lot. I did that like 24/7. That's all we did after school, just play video games. So I thought to myself, why don't I try learning how the games worked and all that good stuff? So that's how I got introduced to computers, and I started learning about that instead. And then into high school, I kind of grew aspiration for learning, what's really going on in the background of a computer, because you just see the front of it, but you don't really know how it works in the back end. So throughout high school, that's what I started doing. And then eventually I went into college, and that's what I did for my major. And just this past May, I graduated, so class of 2023. And yeah, some milestones that I would say I came into a lot was just you're never sure of what you really want to do because I wanted to be a musician, and then before I picked up computers, I did a few other things along the way. I tried playing instruments. I tried being a soccer player, played some football too, and I was never too sure what do I see myself doing in the future. So I guess trying a bunch of different things and just being comfortable with changing up the aspirations and what drives you, as long as you know you're interested in this thing right now, that's the best thing you can do is apply it and learn it. And yeah, that's what I kind of just kept doing until I found something that I saw myself doing more and more. Because if I picked something I didn't like, I would do it for like a month and then stop, and then do it for another month and then stop. But when I started doing something every day and I started getting the love for it, that's when I really knew it was what I wanted. And so what I do for work today is I just graduated and I'm a software engineer. I work for a HVAC contractor. So I heard some school like Putney, Brattleboro, White River Valley. We do work out there. We do work for the state. We do work for hospitals like UVM. Honestly, any business in the state that needs, so HVAC is heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and cooling. So think of like the air you're getting up. So when it's warm, when it's cold outside, like right now, you want it to be warm inside so you're not freezing. And when it's warm outside, you want it to be a little cold inside so you're not too hot. So we just do work to keep people calm and air conditioned in buildings. Okay. And yeah, I don't know, was there any other question?
No, you covered it all, Stephane. It's so great to hear your path and some of your connections to some of the schools that are joining us today. So thank you. We'll get back to you with more questions. Sara, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sara Wilmot, and I'm actually a school counselor at Hanover High School, but I grew up in Stratford, Vermont, and I went to Thetford Academy for high school. And then after high school, I realized when I was a kid, I really wanted to be two things. One was a ballerina when I was really little, and I realized that probably wasn't going to come true, although I really enjoyed dance. But I really wanted to be a teacher of some sort, and I didn't know what that meant or what age or what kind of kids I wanted to work with, but I knew I kind of wanted to be something like a teacher. So I went away to college, and I went to Washington College in Maryland for a couple of years, and I studied psychology. And then I did a semester abroad in South Africa, which was really cool. And then I came home and ended up transferring to Johnson State College, which doesn't exist anymore, but it's Vermont State Colleges. And I graduated with my bachelor's degree in psychology. And at that time, I realized I really liked working with people. And so I got a job as a counselor in community mental health and in Bradford, Vermont. And that was really, really great. I worked there for 6 years, working with families, supporting children and families in all sorts of different situations. And so that was really, really cool. And then I realized, I think I really want to be in the school system. I really like the school system. I think it would be a really great place to work. So I went back to get my master's degree in education, specifically in school counseling. And once I finished that, I started to work at Newberry Elementary School in Vermont, which is a K-6 school. And then I moved to Plainfield Elementary, which is a K-8 school in New Hampshire. And now I'm at Hanover High School. And I'm a ninth grade school counselor. So I work with kids transitioning from eighth grade, like many of you are. We have kids coming from Hanover, Norwich, Stratford, Cornish, Sharon, Heartland, all over the place. So I work with schools and I work with kids on the transition from eighth grade to ninth grade. And then once kids are here, I work with kids and support them academically. I help them with their schedules and choosing their classes, working with their teachers. And then I also support students socially and emotionally, making sure students feel supported and safe at school. And that's sort of my story. And that's what I'm doing now.
Thanks so much for sharing, Sara. Halley, I see you've joined us. So if you can unmute and introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about those early middle school aspirations and then how along your career path you ended up where you are now.
Okay, will do. I apologize for any background noise because I am in my office at work right now. Hi, everyone. I'm Halley Riley-Elliot. I am the vehicle maintenance manager here at Killington Resort. I manage the whole fleet of snowcats, ATVs, snowmobiles, side-by-sides, vehicles, anything on the mountain that has a motor. My team manages, and I manage all of my team and them. What I wanted to be when I was in middle school was a marine biologist, and then I started working at a ski resort and I fell in love with it. I also dabbled in the healthcare system. I was an LNA for 4 years, I believe, 3 years. And then I bought a Jeep Wrangler and decided that I wanted to work as a mechanic, and I went to Vermont Technical College, which is now part of the Vermont State College, and graduated with my associate's degree in diesel power technology. And here I am now.
Great. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. And we didn't hear too much background noise. Zoom's pretty good at filtering that out. Okay. And last on our panel, we have Trooper Pearson. Would you unmute and introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name's Griffin Pearson, but many of the folks that I meet call me Trooper Pearson. So I'm originally from Michigan, which, if you guys look at a map, is the state that looks like a mitt. Does everyone know where Michigan is? So I'm from that state, and I grew up all over the country. Oh, I see some hands going up. Other people know where Michigan is too. Awesome. So I grew up all over the country, and from a young age, there were 3 jobs I really wanted to do. I wanted to play in the NFL as a quarterback because I love football. I wanted to be a police officer like so many other people had been in my family. And then the third, I wanted to be in the military and fly fighter jets. Anybody else think that they might want to do one of those 3 jobs? No? Okay, I see a couple hands. We got a couple cool people here, I see. Cool. So as I grew up going through the rest of my life, I pursued all of those avenues. And there were a couple things that I learned. One, I was not skilled enough to play in the NFL. I'm just not that good at football. Second, I pursued the military route to fly airplanes, was offered an opportunity to do that, and then in the final stages ended up having that withdrawn because I had a medical issue that barred me from being able to fly airplanes for the military. So then when I was in college, like a lot of you, I had a professor or a teacher that was a really good friend. And I said to them, hey, what am I supposed to do now? I feel really beat up. I don't know what to do. And my professor or my teacher, like you all have, said to me, hey, Griffin, we know you, I know you, and I think you would be a really good police officer. And I said, why? And they said a couple things. And this is a question I'm going to ask all of you. Do you all like to be outside every day? Who here likes to be outside every day? Can I see your hand? Okay, a lot of people like to be outside. Who here likes to help other people? Can I see your hand? Awesome. And then who here wants to do something a little different every single day? A couple people. Well, it was just like me. And so my teacher said, hey, I think you should pursue this avenue. There's a police department in Maryland, because I went to college in Virginia. So there's a police department in Maryland that I think you'd be a very good fit at. So I ended up applying for that police department. I ended up getting a job. Later in my career, I ended up moving towards the greater Washington, D.C. area. So how many of you know where the White House is? Where the president lives? Cool. So that's where I used to work as well. I used to work in that area as a police officer. And then I took a hiatus from law enforcement did some other school, worked in some other fields, but I missed helping people in this capacity. And so then I moved with my wife, our son, and our dogs back up to Vermont, where I used to live. And now I'm a state trooper here in the state. So now I get to hang out and help people like you. So if you see me or anybody else wearing my uniform, make sure you wave.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Trooper Pearson. So I hope after meeting our 4 panelists for today, you hear that a lot of times people have more than one interest, and sometimes they change along their career path. That's something that you'll hear from a lot of people if you ask them what they're doing now. Is that something they've always been interested in? Or it's kind of a fun question to ask some adults. When you were my age, what were you interested in doing, and how did you get to where you are today? Another thing I want to point out is this brochure that you have in your hands. You will notice that our panelists had color stripes down the side of their Zoom background. So Stephane represented this orange category in your brochure, so you can read about occupations related to what Stephane does, and you can look at some of that labor market information. Sara was in this yellow section. Halley was in the purple section, and Trooper Pearson was in this green section. So each of our panelists represent a different category that's in that brochure you're holding. So go ahead and take a look at that. Look at some other related occupations and some of that labor market information. Okay, so I'm going to move into the second question. Students, have you ever heard of the 4 C's? These are 4 different skill sets that are kind of widely known as being transferable to many different jobs or occupations. So if you can be good at doing some of these 4 skill sets, you can apply those skills to different occupations you might be interested in. So if you change your mind on what your career interests are, or if you change jobs along your career path, these 4 sets of skills can move along with you. So we're going to introduce you to the 4 C's, and I'm going to ask each panelist to tell us a little bit about how they use these 4 C's in their current jobs that they have now. So Sara, I'm going to start with you. The first C we're going to talk about is communication. So what communication skills do you use as a school counselor?
Okay, well, I feel like I'm communicating all of the time. I'm really glad I got this question because communication is a huge part of what I do every day. So I meet with students and I meet with parents and their families. I meet with other teachers and staff in my school. And I meet with community partners a lot of the time, other therapists and clinicians in the community, or just other folks in the community. And so I'm needing to communicate a lot of the time. And so that can look like verbal communication. So when I'm meeting with students, we often sit face to face and we talk things out. Or when I'm meeting with a parent or talking on the phone or on a Zoom. But there's also a lot of written communication, a lot of emails that happen between me and staff or myself and students. And also, in terms of, I think, formality, I think there's definitely a lot of informal communication that happens when I'm walking through the halls and I'm talking with students, or I actually teach a class too. And so when I'm in the classroom, there's a lot of informal communication. I'm talking to kids all the time and to people in our building. And there's also formal communication when I need to write a letter to the community or to staff members or to parents, sort of explaining what we're doing or what a program is. Then that is when I would use more formal communication in my letter writing. But I think it's a part of everything that I do. And I've definitely gotten better over it over the years. And I think there's always room to grow. Sometimes I think I have communicated something clearly, and then someone asks me a question. I'm like, oh, it was so clear in my brain, but I wasn't able to get it out the way I intended it to go. So I think it's a skill that I'm always refining and learning more. But it's being able to communicate kind of what's on your mind. And a big part of my job, or a huge part of my job, is helping students and helping them be successful in school and in life. And so I often need to be able to communicate with others and advocate for students and talk to others about what students need and want. So communication is definitely a huge piece of what I do as a school counselor.
Thanks so much, Sara. So we're going to go into the second C, collaboration. And Halley, if you want to unmute, I would love it if you could tell us a little bit about when collaboration skills are helpful to you as a vehicle maintenance manager at Killington.
So collaboration is incredibly important, and collaboration is another term for working together. So a lot of times, all of the mechanics, when there's a machine that's down, whether that be a truck or a snowcat or a four-wheeler, we're all working together to try and figure out what the issue is. Another reason why we work together is to make sure everybody's safe, because we do a lot of heavy lifting and working in small, tight areas where it's always nice to have an extra set of hands and eyes looking at you to make sure you're being safe. And another huge thing is it's great for coming up with new ways to do things and complete tasks.
Great. Thanks, Halley. Okay, the third C we have is creativity. Stephane, if you could respond to this question, where do you use creativity skills as a software engineer?
Yeah, creativity is used a lot in our field because our job, usually people just talk to us face to face. Somebody will come to you, is like, I want my system to do this and that. I want the graphics to look like this. I want this button to be here. So people are talking to you verbally, and then you need to write that down and then translate that into like a design. So you're using your creative mind. Like if I was in this person's shoe, what would I be imagining? Jot that out, and then we start programming it, doing it in our graphics, and then we show them. Usually the first time they're like, that's not what I said. So it's a back and forth. Do you want it like this? Do you want it like that? What color do you want this? What do you want this to do? So you just have to be creative, and everybody's different. So one customer might want something like this, but then the other one wants a complete opposite, but they're sort of using the same word to describe it. So the other thing is English is a very vague language, so people can use the same word to like mean two different things. So you have to be very careful and just be creative and be patient and try to put yourself on other people's shoes and just imagine and then put it down to paper, show it to them, rinse and repeat, and yeah.
Great, Stephane. Thank you. And our last C in the 4 C's is critical thinking skills. These are, I'm just going to take a second here to describe. Critical thinking is when you take in information by reading, watching, observing, listening, you analyze it and you apply it somehow in the real world. So Trooper Pearson, how do critical thinking skills help you as a state trooper?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kathi. So in my job, we're always dealing with people. So again, I'm going to ask the same question as earlier. How many of you like talking to other people? Not as many hands as before. Uh-oh. Is it too early in the morning? I think we like talking to people. I've seen some of you talk to your friends. So in my job, we talk to people all the time. And a lot of what I do is having to listen to what's happened. So I'll ask a lot of questions to folks and they'll tell me, hey, this person did X, Y, or Z, or I saw this happen with this other person or this car. And so my job is to, one, be a really good listener. How many of you, if I asked your teachers, would say that you're a good listener? No? No hands? Teachers give instructions and everyone's talking the other way. So part of my job is being a good listener. And so when we're a good listener and when I'm a good listener, I'm able to end up applying what I've heard and I'm able to think through what I've been told and then take action. So again, how many of you have tried to jump out or scare a friend? Try to get a good laugh. Yeah, we've all done that, right? Well, sometimes when you're doing that, you have to hide and you have to think through where you think your friend's going to be in order for you to scare them. Well, obviously in my job, I'm not trying to scare people. I'm trying to help people, but I have to be thinking like that. Where would this person be going? What would they be doing? What did the last person I talked to tell me? And I need to process what they've thought, what they've said. And so a lot of my job, like what you've heard from the other panelists, is not just listening or communicating, but it's thinking through what information we've been given and then applying it so that we can help solve a crime or help somebody who needs help. So there's kind of a bunch of different avenues for how that's applicational in my job. But those are some things that I would encourage you to think through if you have any interest in becoming a police officer.
Great, thank you so much. And Trooper Pearson, you can keep yourself unmiked. I'm going to start with you for the next question. Oh wait, actually, you can keep yourself unmiked, but I have a question for the students. So these 4 C's, I know you've heard of probably most of them before: communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. How many of you, can you raise your hand if you think you have some of these skills already? You're already good at some of the things you just heard about. Okay, I'm looking. Oh, good. I'm seeing most hands up. All of your hands really should be up, because when you are in middle school, you are already learning communication skills, collaboration. I know you've done teamwork and group projects in school. You might have been in a sport or in drama or something where you've done teamwork. And creativity, you're using that all the time. Some of you are artists, or you perform, or you do different things, and you're learning how to do things creatively that could be applied in a job. And critical thinking, what Trooper Pearson just talked to us about, you are constantly taking in information and making decisions of what to do with that information. So think about those 4 C's and how you can be building them now, because you're going to be using them when you work someday. So remember that. Okay, so Trooper Pearson, I'm going to start with you. Could you let us know what training and education is most helpful for the work that you're doing now? And the rest of the panelists, I'm going to ask you this question too.
All right, everyone, I'm going to surprise you. All right. So I have a bachelor's degree. So that means I went to college, and I also have a master's degree. However, I think that the best education and training that you can do now is a couple other things. I think it's most important that you study now in middle school and high school. That's going to be the most foundational education that you have to build off of. I'd give special attention to English. I think that writing, reading, and communicating with other folks is got to be one of the most important components of my job. And I'd encourage you to focus on that in your world. The other side of it is when you actually go into the career field of law enforcement, you'll end up going through several different trainings. If you end up being a state trooper like me, we're the ones who wear the funny hats. You end up going through 3.5 weeks of what we call pre-basic. And that's a pretty hardcore time where the Vermont State Police teach you how to be a state trooper. You then go through a 4.5-month journey called the Basic Academy, which is where every law enforcement officer in the state of Vermont goes. And we live there. It's in Pittsford, Vermont, not too far from Rutland. And then after that, if you're still a state trooper, you go through additional training that we call post-basic. And that's more training where we end up working on our firearms. So if any of you like to shoot or do anything like that, we practice quite a bit. If you like to drive fast, or if you think you might want to drive someday, I know probably most of you aren't driving quite yet. We do a lot of driving, and we just learn more of the laws. And then every year we have additional trainings in between. But Kathi, the one thing that I will say that's the most important training is it's got less to do with what you do in the classroom, and it has to do more with your character now. So if I can just make one plea for everyone here, and I see all the different schools, please take this time in your life to focus on doing the right thing and having integrity, even when you don't think anyone else is watching. So it's not about getting a star at the end of the day or being given a trophy. It's just about doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. In our world and in my world as a police officer, lots of people apply for this job and do not get it simply because of bad decisions they made early on in their life. And I really believe that everyone here is a good person. And I think that you all have it in you to do whatever you put your mind to. But if you think you want to be in law enforcement, I highly encourage you, again, really work on doing the right thing no matter what. Okay? Awesome. Thank you so much, Kathi.
Yeah, thanks, Trooper Pearson. I'm going to move on to Halley because I know you need to possibly leave us a little bit early. Can you respond a little bit about the training? And I know you've trained for doing different things, but how about for your occupation now? What training or education helped you?
I'd say some sort of tech program, whether that be a technical college or like Stafford Technical Center for high school students, just get the hands-on experience and learn the basics. And then as you decide what you want to work on, if you want to work on cars or motorcycles or snowcats or heavy equipment, then you'll have all of the basics under your belt and you'll be able to understand the process of those pieces of equipment better. And I do unfortunately have to head out now. So it was great talking to everybody. Let me know if you have any questions.
Bye, Halley. So students, if other questions come up for Halley, go ahead and put them in the chat because we'll follow up with her after and can get those answered. So we're going to move on to Sara. Could you tell us a little bit about the education and training that, and I like also, Trooper Pearson, how you mentioned, like, there's the standard training that might be the path to your job, but also some other little nuggets that might not be as obvious. So share anything you'd like, Sara.
Sure. So I think, you know, I'm thinking back to middle school and high school, and I think I definitely was a person who really enjoyed being around people and helping people in general and communicating. But I think being involved in things outside of school, like have like community service and working with other people and just being in a helper role sort of like throughout my life has been really important. In high school, I was a mentor for a student and worked with her really closely. And a lot of summer jobs that I had were usually related to like either being a camp counselor or working with students who maybe needed a little extra help. And so I think all of those little experiences along the way, it really helped me learn how to work with people and how to be caring and empathetic. And then when I decided to that I really wanted to be a school counselor, I think my my bachelor's degree in psychology was really helpful, but it was sort of a big picture. It was a really big, broad program. And I learned some great things, but I think it probably wasn't until I went to graduate school and I went to Plymouth State University. That's when I really started to learn the ins and outs of being a school counselor, and the internship programs were really important when I could actually sit and work with kids and make mistakes and then learn from them.
Great. Thanks so much, Sara. Stephane, how about education and training for you in your role as a software engineer?
Yeah, so as a software engineer, I would say the first thing you need to be is like curious and open-minded. You have to be willing to learn something that might seem weird or awkward at first and might take some adjusting to, but over time you'll just learn. And just being curious and willing to learn new things is the first one you need. And being self-motivated and proactive is another thing. Like, no, my boss doesn't like tell me what to do at work. We just have a bunch of work in front of us, and he trusts that I can be proactive and pick whatever is the most essential we need to get done for the day. And that's another skill you really need. And I would say, as far as education, you don't need too much math, but having a decent, solid understanding of math is good to have with you. And then obviously, as you grow more into your software engineering field and you get better, you're going to need to eventually hit the computer classes because you're going to have to learn how to talk to computers. So a lot of computer classes. The same way lawyers have to learn law is the same way an engineer have to learn a computer because it's like your baby and it's who you talk with. So talking to computers is like that's like the number one thing. And then being humble and like willing to learn from other is the biggest thing because everybody thinks they know how to do something. So you just have to be able to hear what another person is saying and try it, see if it works. Because more often than not, when you click play or when you're done, things don't always go how you planned it. So just being able to open your ears and be like, oh, maybe I might have overlooked this thing over here and that's what's causing this issue. So let me try it a different way. And another thing I'll say is just you need a strong sense of ownership and responsibilities because a computer is kind of like someone's thinking in a way. You know, when you're using like say Instagram, for example, somebody had to sit down and think of how do I want Instagram to act and react. It's not any different than like reading a book. You know, you're interacting with someone's creation, so to speak. So that person needs to be able to take full ownership when things go wrong, when things don't work as expected, or when things really don't work as expected. So, you know, like software in a plane, for example, you don't want that thing going wrong. So you need to know who designed this at what time and how did they go through with designing it. So just having that strong sense of like, I'm the one who's responsible if things go wrong and people are trying to use my thinking to help them have easier days in their life, you know, use social media to help you pass time, entertain, whatever else. So, yeah, and the last thing I'll say, just being able to understand software architecture and just how everything comes together, which sounds scary at first. So you just gotta learn it baby steps at a time, but you really have to go from the bottom all the way back to the top and then back again. So just understanding the full scope of things and how things come together that's like the last piece that really puts it all together for you.
Great, Stephane. Thank you. Now I'm going to ask one more question before we do our wrap up. And I know because of class periods, some students might need to leave. You can catch the tail end of anything you might have missed in the recording after. VSAC will be getting that link out to schools. But students, if you have any questions for any of the four panelists, even Halley, even though she had to leave, ask a teacher or pop them into the chat and we'll make sure to get those answered after. So now's the time to do that. So we catch those before we end the Zoom, but I'm going to ask one more question. I am curious, something that I hear a lot when I'm traveling around the state working with students is ways that there's a lot of interest in ways that different occupations or jobs and companies that people work for make a difference in the community, either for a very local community or for the state, or maybe society in general, people or animals, but just different ways that doing work can make a difference for others. So I'm going to ask each of you to reflect on that as the response to the last question we'll do for this panel. And then we'll take a look at the chat to see if there's anything in there that we can answer before we end. Otherwise, we'll get those answers down to the schools for this event. And I'm going to start. So Halley had to leave. I am going to start with Halley, and I'm going to read something out of her bio that she provided to us that really responds to the question of making a difference. So we heard about Halley, how she went to school and was an LNA for 3 to 4 years, but now is managing the snowcat fleet at Killington, 2 very different occupations. But she says here that she's been participating in the pageant circuit, aiming to inspire other young women to follow their dreams and promoting women in male-dominated roles, because that's what Halley's doing herself. So that's one way she's chosen to make a difference through her work, being in a role that traditionally men have as a woman. So she's going out and inspiring other women to consider doing work in male-dominated roles. So let's go around. If each of the rest of the panelists can just share some way that you or the place that you work for makes a difference in the community. So Sara, we'll go to you.
Sure. So I think education is super important, obviously, because I work in a high school, and I know kids don't always want to be in school. I know some of you may not always want to be in school, but it's just such an important piece of what we have to do and what your job is as kids. And I think so being a part of the system where kids are getting educated, and that we're also, hopefully I'm supporting kids as they come across all sorts of challenges. And I'm hoping that, by providing that support, that kids can feel safe and supported and confident as they go into the world and then contribute to society and have jobs and families and work in the community. So I think, I think there's a lot of things that students struggle with. And so I think if we can, as school counselors, can really help students feel good about the work they're doing in school and feel good about themselves, that I think we are making a difference that way.
Great. Thank you so much, Sara. And thank you for all that you shared with us. Let's go to Trooper Pearson next. Can you talk and I know you talked about helping people, but if you can just highlight ways that the work that you do makes a difference.
Sure. So again, yep, you can hear me. So like I said earlier, with our job and with my job in particular, it can come across a couple different ways. And so one could be stopping somebody who's making a bad decision in a really hard moment. So it might be stopping what we call a bad guy doing a bad thing. And why is that important? It's because we're helping someone else who may be a victim. There's other times where maybe a tragedy hits, somebody's passed away, or there's been a serious emergency or an accident. And as a law enforcement officer, as a state trooper here in Vermont, we are the immediate response. That's why you sometimes hear the phrase first responder. It's because we're the ones who respond first. And so there's very applicational ways that myself as a state trooper intervene often with folks, but there's also the ripple effect. Maybe it's following up with the family member that no one's heard from in a long time, and just giving peace of mind and being able to say that that individual or that relative is okay. They're just taking a nap. Maybe they went on a fishing trip and we just need to make sure that they're okay. So there's a lot of different ways that plays out, but my role in particular is very immediate based. And so if you're somebody who wants to make a difference, but you also want to feel the effects of the difference you're making, almost like a beginning and an end during a shift, this is a great role to do that. So.
Thank you, Trooper Pearson. Stephane, can we wrap this question up with you? And I know you talked a little bit about how you're designing things for different people who have different needs, but can you talk to us a little bit about how your role or your company makes a difference?
Yeah, like I said, our company helps other company in the state. You know, we help keep other companies up. So our duty is just when a new building is being put, how can we make it so it's healthy, the air that people are breathing, and it's not contaminated. It's a well-designed system that can really run on itself without needing the use of people as much. And then we also make really, really complicated things easy for people to understand and use. So not everybody has the time or the knowledge to understand how an entire building functions. You know, you have other things to worry about. So we'll come in and just make it so that you press this one thing and the rest is magic. And if something breaks, if your building catches on fire or something crazy like that, we also have systems in place. We have safety system in place to make sure nothing horrible goes on, and we alert you, we send you an email, all that good stuff. So we keep people happy and comfortable in their buildings. Because the outside world is, you know, if it's really humid outside or it's really hot, you don't really have a choice unless you're gonna have a fan next to you everywhere you go. That humidity and that hotness is gonna be getting to you. You're gonna sweat a lot. So when you go inside the building, you don't want it to be like that. You want it to be nice, comfortable, so you can just relax and worry about what you have going on for the day. And the other thing we're trying to do too is be mindful of the environment. You know, making sure we're not polluting the air too much, making sure we're having units that are really being energy efficient, so we're not using too much electricity. And then the last thing we're adding is AI, so the ability to just not have people involved at all. You know, how about we just remove people from the picture? The building itself is going to take care of itself. If it's cold outside, the building is going to warm up. If it's warm outside, the building is going to get a little cooler inside, and you don't even have to worry about it. You just walk in and everything is set and ready for you. So that's the direction we're heading toward, just making people not even think about it and just go on with their day, and everything works as expected. So keeping people happy.
All right, thanks, Stephane. So I see a lot of questions coming into the chat, which is fantastic. I see some of our panelists and Matt are answering some of these here. Any that we can't answer today will get answered after. But I have a final question for students. Before we let everyone go, we'll wrap up here in a few minutes. Is there anything today? Can you share something that could be put into the chat that surprised you or was new information, something that was brand new to you, you didn't know it before you walked into the room, or just really surprised you, something that a panelist said or an answer to one of the questions? As you're thinking about that, and entering those into the chat. I'm just going to read a few responses here to some of the questions in the chat, because anyone who's watching this recording after, we have a few schools that signed up to watch the recording after because they weren't available to attend live. I want to make sure that they can hear some of them. The very first question I saw was for Halley. When she was talking, she mentioned being an LNA, and the question was, could you describe what an LNA is? And Halley responded, that's a licensed nursing assistant. And Matt shared it's an important role in the healthcare system supporting patients and nurses. So a lot of times in different jobs, we have lots of acronyms and abbreviations. The panelists, I think, were mostly pretty good today at spelling those things out, but always good to ask questions. If there's something you don't know, if you're exploring jobs and you don't understand something, ask, always ask to get that information. So great job asking that question. Then let's see if there's a few others here that we can share. We have, it looks like we have a question here on if there are any information about independent jobs, like where you could work for yourself. And Matt responded saying working for yourself has never been easier, and the areas where you can do that are vast. You can be a carpenter, lawyer, logger, any sort of design, bookkeeper, the list goes on and on. Working for yourself and being your own boss is doable. So that we didn't have represented on the panel today. So it's a great question and great response. Thanks, Matt. There's some specific questions here for the panelists. I saw one that was for Trooper Pearson about how many calls a week do you make? And I saw that Trooper Pearson said every week varies, but last year we responded to more than 1,000 calls of service. So keep those questions coming. We will get those answered for everyone after and send them out to all schools, because a few had to log off. But go ahead, if there's anything that surprised you or something that was new, pop that in the chat. We'd love to hear that. I see here from Richford, some of our students were surprised about the different salary amounts specifically for carpentry. So that information is right in here in the guides you have, like how much people make. Sometimes that can be an awkward question to ask. How much money do you earn? Well, you can find out right in this brochure. And by looking up at, I saw Matt shared a link for some labor market information, so you can get it on any occupation to find out what those median wages and salaries are. So yeah, keep that coming in. We'll give a few moments here to keep questions coming in the chat, since they're coming in rapidly right now. And I am going to take a moment to give a few thank yous. First, students and teachers, thank you so much for spending part of your morning with us. Panelists, taking time out of your day. And I know Halley said she was at work, but I believe Sara, Stephane, and Trooper Pearson, you are all at work. You can't tell by their backgrounds, but Trooper Pearson is, I believe, in your car, not driving, but, and Sara, I saw you were at your desk. So thanks for taking time out of your workday to share so many wonderful thoughts and inspirational information about your jobs. We really appreciate that. And Matt, thanks for making economics fun and helping us understand labor market information. I learn something new every time I hear from you. And VSAC, also, thanks for hosting this with your flawless tech setup and your whole team that pulled this all off. And thanks also to the McClure Foundation for providing a really helpful way to understand labor market information about some of Vermont's highest paying, high demand jobs. So thank you to everyone. I still see questions and answers coming in here. Anna, I don't know if you have any wrap up or want us to do anything more before we wrap up the Zoom. Let me know.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you again, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Kathi and Matt and all of our panelists. This recording will be emailed out to all of the schools that signed up, and it will also be posted to our webpage, vsac.org/Vermont Career Connect, where you can also find a number of other recordings of people talking about their jobs, lots of links to career resources and other just great resources for Vermonters. So I will send that link as well to your schools, but yeah, keep the questions coming. Thank you everybody for being here, and have fun continuing to explore careers.